Happiness is a choice. If I think I can only be happy if they like me, you're not going to be happy. You can't please everybody. You don't have to please everybody. You don't need everybody's approval to be happy. No matter what you do, somebody's going to disagree with you, and disapproval doesn't have to ruin your happiness.
You have that as a choice. You actually do. You don't wake up in the morning and negativity, dysfunction, problems, and issues just randomly pop up. These are the people that you have decided to include in your life. So the outcome of your day, your hour, your minute, your week, your month, and your year, always dysfunctional, is always draining, because these are the type of people you've decided to include in your day-to-day life.
Because in a situation where you got a point here, am I going to please God in this situation, or am I going to please this person? When you take that long look and realize, I'm going to give an account today for every word I say, it's going to change. It's going to give you confidence. It's going to give you courage. It's going to give you the ability to stand up and be a man in a situation that is constantly trying to put pressure on you to be politically correct or socially acceptable.
You cannot expect yourself to feel good about your day when you're including negative and dysfunctional people in your day. So what their childhood friends? So what their family? We have a responsibility to walk in the direction of peace. I want to enjoy myself. I want to smile. I actually want to feel good about the people that are around me.
None of us wake up and say, today is the day I destroy my life. What we do is we make these teeny tiny decisions. All day long, these tiny decisions that take you so far off track. And then you wake up like I did, and you look at your life and you think, how the hell did I get here? And you have no idea.
It has never been so easy to spend the best hours of your days chasing distractions. You can be distracted or you can get epic work done. You can't do both.
If you go back to the people that love you, be very careful of taking their advice in an area they're not successful. Furthermore, if you wanted to get in great shape, why in the world would you take advice from somebody who tells you, this doesn't work? You start taking advice from somebody who's not even in great shape, who's not even fit, and they steal your fitness dream. Take counsel from people who are successful in the area you're trying to be successful in. You have to compartmentalize success.
Watch out with the relationships you have. What kind of person are you becoming because of the relationships that you have right now? Do those people contribute to you? Do they help you grow and develop yourself? What kind of person are you becoming? People can affect us. Our peers can affect us. Our environment can affect us. Just working consciously to overcome the poverty consciousness that I was raised in. The feeling constantly of saying, Les Brown, you deserve this. It's not too good to be true. It's true because you've earned it. The old-fashioned way, you have worked for it.
Are you carrying weights that had nothing to do with you, that were completely out of your control? Are you being victimized by you?
Come on, you don't have to radically do something. You can gain momentum and make changes as you go. Just start. It doesn't take much for you to feel good about yourself. Just commit it to a new direction and you feel good. Self-esteem starts to accelerate.
You want to get better? You want to self-improve? Stop looking for a shortcut and find your guts and your passion and your drive and find your will.
With the feeling of running out of time comes pressure, anxiety, fear. Some people try to snuff out everybody around them who's becoming what you wish you were. Envy and jealousy, depression and eating disorders, and all come to help us cope with all of these issues where we are not progressing as well as we thought because we are running out of time.
You've got to chisel your character out of the raw material of yourself, just like a sculptor. Everything that happens to you, good or bad, is an opportunity for building your character. Character doesn't refer to other people. It doesn't refer to having power over other people or getting other people to follow you. Character is something that you have and that you are. Character is the person you are after you've chiseled and have gotten past all the unnecessary material to what's underneath.
You don't have anything to give that you don't have. So you have to keep your own self full. That's your job. That your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full.
Do you remember the last time you felt rejected? Was it a guy that never returned a phone call? Or maybe it was someone in your life who never thought you were good enough, no matter what you did to try to impress them. We all know rejection hurts. It makes us feel like we're not good enough. It causes us to question ourselves and doubt our future. I submit to you that rejection isn't something we should be afraid of. And it sure isn't something that should make us get discouraged, depressed, or work unhealthy amounts of hours just to prove to the world that we are somebody worth loving and paying attention to.
It's always going to be based on the people that you decided to include in your day, your week, your month, your year, your minute, your hour. When you go to sleep at night, how are you going to feel about your day? Stop running around acting as if you don't have a choice. You do have a choice. You love rumors, you love issues, you love problems, you love it. That's why at the end of every night you are drained. Tell everybody that
they're going to take. How I view my stuff, how I view my possessions is going to determine what I do with those possessions.
I don't think adversity by itself builds character, and I certainly don't think that success erodes it. You can build character by how you respond to what happens in your life. You build character out of certain qualities that you must create and diligently nurture within yourself. But the really amazing thing about character is that if you're sincerely committed to making yourself into the person you want to be, you'll not only create those qualities, you'll strengthen them. Character sustains itself and nurtures itself, even as it's being put to work and tested and challenged.
See, when you start growing, when you start changing the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you act, the way you respond to things, when you start saying no, if people can put you on a guilt trip, they will, and use you and abuse you over and over and over again, you got to draw the line. Don't go through life feeling like you're powerless. Victims are people that are powerless. You're not powerless. You are powerful.
And an apple a day, committed to finally having a health program that'll make you the healthiest you've ever been in the next 20 years, all you got to do is munch on that first apple. But you munch on that first apple and say, this is the beginning of developing a health program that's going to make me so healthy I'll have the vitality to do whatever I want to do for the next 30 years of my life. You don't need some dramatic vision. Just begin something. That's how easy it is to change your life. You just get back on a better track. It's a small journey to changing direction.
I wonder what your life would look like if you went back to your moments of rejection, and rather than cry, get angry, you analyze those moments and reframe them as protection or projection. I wonder if you'd find keys that would unlock new paths in life that are far beyond what you can think or imagine. I wonder if buried beneath your pain and unfortunate circumstances is treasure that you...
Are you going to go through the type of suffering that gets you closer to your dream, or the suffering that moves you further away? It's the unnecessary suffering that these haters put you through that isn't fair to you. It's the suffering of emotion you feel. It's the suffering of fear you feel, of wanting to please everybody, This is what I'd call false suffering. Suffering with no finish line.
That's not who you are. That's just a perverted use of your power that you aren't satisfied with. And you've got the power to change that. Wherever you are, how, I don't know. But I know you've got the power to do that. It really doesn't matter what has happened to you. See, the only thing that really matters is, what are you going to do about it? That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Meditation won't get you there. Getting better isn't a hack or a trick or a one change that you need to make. Getting better is a campaign. It's a daily, a weekly, it's an hourly fight. An incessant fight that doesn't stop against weakness and against temptation and against laziness. It's a campaign of discipline. It's waking up early and going to bed late and grinding out every second in between.
Are you suffering from the pain of losing a loved one? Today, my guest will share how God comforts him through the loss of his wife of 45 years. Before I introduce him, take a look at this video celebrating the life of his wife, Rochelle Neiman.
Normally, stories don't begin this way. Death isn't something most people want mentioned when we talk about grace, love, and value of life. However, Rochelle Neiman's story goes beyond her memorial stone.
We met in college on a blind date. We went out on Thanksgiving weekend. I never went out with anybody else ever. That was it. 18 years old. We were together every day for 45 years.
Rochelle died from ovarian cancer. Time doesn't heal the pain of losing a loved one. Through Christ, feelings of loss can be replaced by joy-filled memories of life.
I believe that cancer is defeated.
When my mom was sick, she was fighting the disease that ultimately took her life. She would come in and do healing services in the church. And one night I remember she was so sick and so weak. I begged her to just let me or Shannon do the service and for her to rest. And she said, no, we're going to go in and we're going to pray for the sick. And I believe that people are going to be healed.
When she passed away, when I saw people's reaction, it became so real to me what her life had meant. And it's been in this time that I've come to understand how incredible it is when you recognize that you can live your life in a way that really makes a difference, that really impacts people.
Since she's passed away, I've learned of all these school tuitions we paid for, these rents we paid for, these car payments we made, prescriptions we paid for, glasses for kids that we bought.
For weeks and weeks, we just heard stories after story after story of how she just touched so many people, just over and over again, of how my mom intervened in people's lives to help them get through things. And at the end of the day, the story was that she gave grace.
Rochelle passed away on December 30th, 2012, just 2 days after her granddaughter Emery was born. Bittersweet, to say the least. Her grandchildren won't remember Rochelle holding them, but they will always feel the embrace of their grandmother's legacy of love.
I will always tell Emery how my mom showed that you could live such an incredible life of quality, centered on the Word of God, focused on the Word of God, a life that was still so fun and so meaningful, and that really served an incredible purpose.
She had experienced God's grace in her life, and therefore she knew that whatever she had experienced from God, to give that same experience to the people that she was around. And she did it day in and day out. It was really incredible to watch.
You know, she loved people and she loved life. The girl squeezed every drop of life out of every day. I used to kid her and say, you know, I think when you go to bed at night, the day you just live, wave a white flag of surrender because you just pound that day. And she just looked at me and said, well, of course. She said, I believe God expects that of us. that every day is a gift from God, and you should live it. And the girl lived it.
Death. It isn't something most people want mentioned when we talk about grace, love, and value of life. However, Rochelle's story goes far beyond her memorial stone, to the school she started, the church she helped build, the family she loved, and the individual she continues to inspire. A Christ-centered life means death isn't the end. It's part of the process of life. The Niemans don't ignore the pain of their loss, but they choose to celebrate and honor the way she lived.
Well, Charles, thank you so much for being willing to be with us and share this very personal story and the pain and the victory of what's going on in your life.
Well, it's an honor, and I'm very, very, very blessed to be here and be able to share this. I hope it helps some people.
You know, I always admire people of faith who, when they do have a difficulty, whether it's something as tragic as yours or the everyday trials of life, decide that they're going to not blame God, have a good attitude, and move on. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story and what you've been feeling, and we want to help the people watching today, because I know a lot of them are probably going through the same thing.
Well, I would say that my story's kind of in two parts. You know, there was the part where we were battling the cancer, and Rochelle was really battling the cancer.
Yeah.
And then the second part was, you know, when she finally did pass away on December the 30th. And so it was about an 8-month battle for us.
And what was that like for you, getting all those treatments?
It was just, you know, incredibly difficult, as many people know. You know, of course, what I went through was nothing compared to what she was going through. It was very hard. You know, it was very difficult, very, very emotionally draining, spiritually draining on me, my kids, my friends, my church. It was hard on all of us, and obviously hard on Rochelle. Everything kind of came to kind of a pivotal point in my life on December the 23rd. We were at MD Anderson in Houston, and things were very difficult. Rochelle was not doing well, and it was very hard. And we had a hotel room next to the hospital, and I was walking. I left her room to go take a shower for a minute, and I'd already settled in my mind that we were going to spend Christmas by ourselves there, and because our family was all back in El Paso. My daughter was a week away from having her baby. She couldn't travel anymore. And my son was doing all of our Christmas services, and so I had to be there with her. And I was walking back, and there was a sky bridge there, and I sat down on that sky bridge, and I felt, for the first time, Joyce, in the whole 8-month process, I felt overwhelmed. I just was kind of come to the end of myself, and I was sitting on that sky bridge, and I began to pray, and I really believe that I began to make the Holy Spirit began to make intercession through me.
Yeah.
And I prayed just some very simple but powerful things, looking back on it now, I realize that it really kind of set me down a good path. And the first thing I prayed was, I said, you know, Father, whatever happens here, I said, and I'm hoping you let her stay with me.
Right.
I said, but whatever happens here, I'm never going to ask you why. I'm never going to question why. I'm never going to ask you why. And I never thought of that. It just kind of came out, and I heard it. And then I said, unexpecting that I would say this, I said, because what happens here is not about me and you. It's about you and her. I said, and whatever happens is between you and her.
We do try to get into things very frequently that really, to be honest, really just are not any of our business, because there are personal things between an individual and God. And certainly, she probably drew very, very extremely close to God.
She did.
During that time of discomfort that she was going through.
She did.
And I try to share with people all the time just the uselessness of having to know why about something that you're just not going to understand. There are things in God that we just don't understand. There are mysteries in God that we don't understand. And a large part of our trusting God and our believing in God and our relationship with God is not just for when we get things the way we want them, but when things happen that we don't understand.
Yeah, you know, I think that there's a scripture in Psalms, I don't remember exactly where it was, you know, where David said, I don't concern myself with things too wonderful for me.
I'm familiar with that.
And I quit concerning myself with that. It's not literally, the second thing I prayed was, this is none of my business. This is about you and her. Yeah. I did say to the Lord that day on the cross bridge, I said, I just want you to know, in case you don't know, that if she passes away, you're going to have to explain this to her. Because she's not going to come in there willingly.
Yeah, I heard you say that on a teaching tape I was listening to, that St. Peter probably had to pull her in because she really wasn't wanting to go.
Come out and explain this to her at the gate, you know. So and the second thing I said that night was, you know, she's always been your daughter. Mm-hmm. And you loaned her to me as my wife. But she's always been your daughter, and she'll always be your daughter.
And you know, just for comfort for people, something that's coming up in my heart is I'm sure that there are people watching right now that thought, well, if I would have known that my loved one was saved, I could be more comforted. And but I just kind of feel led to tell you that, you know, you don't really know what happens to a person in the last few seconds of their life. And even that, you have to leave that between them and God, and don't torment yourself over something that you're never going to know or understand. And I just want to reiterate here that I think I know I talked to you just, I don't know if it was the day after she died or 2 days after. The day after you called me. And I remember how just profoundly spiritually impressed, if that's an okay word to use, that I was when you told me that you had told God, I'll never ask you why. Because that is probably the number one thing that people do. They demand having an answer to something that really they're not going to have an answer for. I mean, even if you figure something out that you think suits you, it's not going to be a good answer. And how wonderful it is to be able to say, God, even in this tragic thing that is so painful to me, I trust you.
I looking back on it, Joyce, I think that was probably what set me down the path to where I am today. That I just, and I would love to take credit for it, but it wasn't me. It was the Holy Spirit in me. And I really believe that in making that decision, that it then opened me up to the future.
I do too.
Because if I had stayed there, I would still be locked back. Because I am convinced that I would still be asking God why, and He wouldn't be saying a word to me.
Right.
It's none of my business.
Yeah.
It's none of my business. And what happened there was not about me and him. It was about her and him.
It is very hard to understand why someone like Rochelle, beautiful woman, being used by God, helping so many people, just really in the prime of life, would die. And then you have people that are seemingly as mean as a snake.
Yep.
You know, that just live on and on and on and on. But one of the things we have to keep in mind is that God is a lot more concerned about eternity than we are sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And Rochelle's future for eternity was settled. And a lot of these people who don't know Christ, theirs is not. And we need to thank God that He is more long-suffering with them and continues to give them an opportunity. You know, we're going to return and continue talking with Pastor Neiman. We've got some other very beautiful, I think, comforting things to share with you. So be sure you stay with us. Well, certainly losing someone that you love can feel overwhelming. But God is our comforter, and He will help us through the pain of our losses. With me is Pastor Charles Neiman. Well, Pastor, we got a good start in the first few minutes of the program talking about how even though you had a terrible loss in your life of your wife of 45 years to that disease we all hate, cancer, that you made a very important decision early on, actually before she passed away, that you would never ask why. Now, why don't you just continue on, because I know there's a lot of people that are really hurting, and that was a very important first step. But what are some other things that has helped you to recover?
I would say that immediately in the next couple of weeks after she passed away, that I basically, looking back on it now, it didn't come to me like this, but looking back on it now, there's been like 4 major things that I've done and continue to do that have really just solidified my life, my kids, my church. The first thing I knew when I was driving home that Sunday morning, I was at the first service, our first Sunday morning service when she passed away. She made me go to church that day.
Made you go to church. I like that.
And so I was driving home, and I had a few moments in the car by myself, and I prayed kind of a Texas prayer, and I said, Lord, please don't let me screw this up. Help me.
Well, actually, that's important. I remember hearing that on your teachings, and I kind of want to just explain to the people what you meant by that as a believer, as a man full of faith, as a man leading other people, and even just as our witness as a Christian, what did you mean by don't let me screw this up?
Well, I knew that I could not let my kids down. I couldn't let Jesus down. I couldn't let the kingdom down. I couldn't let my congregation down. I couldn't let my friends down.
You didn't all of a sudden want to act like you didn't believe what you'd been teaching people all your life.
No, I believe in the abundant life as much now as I ever have.
Right.
And that, Jesus came to give me that life and came to give that life to
And that he loves you. And
Absolutely.
This didn't happen because you did something wrong.
No. I don't know why it happened. It just happened.
It just happened. That's right.
Welcome to life.
God knows.
Yeah. And so, I just said, just don't let me. I'd seen people go through this, and I've seen them collapse and
lose their faith, turn away from God, blame God. Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that. We have a legacy, and I have this relationship with Jesus that I am not going to let anyone steal from me. And Rochelle would be furious with me if I did, and I'm not going to do it.
That's
and so. The first thing I knew, number one, I knew without the Lord having to say anything to me, I already knew this, that I had to get back in the house of God as soon as possible. Because Isaiah 40 verse 31, the King James text says, they that wait upon the Lord. But in the Hebrew it says, they that gather together before the Lord shall renew their strength.
That's good.
I was exhausted mentally, emotionally, spiritually. My kids were worn out. My church was worn out. My friends were worn out.
Right.
But me personally, I was exhausted. And yet, as you know, you can't call time out. You can't say, hold it, I'm going to, everything stop, go in suspension while I recoup. No,
Right.
In 20 minutes, I was going to be at home with my kids, and they were there, and they were grieving, and my friends, and I was going to have to tell the church, and here it goes. It all goes in a new direction now, and I was going to have to step up, Joyce. I had no choice. I had to step up. I wasn't going to start looking for someone else. I had to step up. I could not fail. I could not fail.
That's good.
And I would not.
That's much better than just thinking, well, now I have an excuse to just totally fall apart.
When I was in my car that day, one of the things I prayed was, I decided that in that car, I said, I'm not going to go through life with a limp. And I'm just
That's
not.
good.
I'm not. And so, I got home that day and started doing the things with my family I needed to do. And the next night we were having our New Year's Eve service, and I had people saying, well, who's going to do the service? And I said, well, I am. I'm going to do the service. And people were like, you're crazy. And I said, no, I have to get in the house of God. I have to go where the church is, because there I will get my strength renewed. There I will mount up with wings of eagles. And I did that service. I did the Wednesday night service. I did the memorial service on Friday night. I did all 4 weekend services, and I haven't missed a service since. And in fact, I've done all my services at church, and I've taken speaking engagements around America and around the world. Not because I'm running from, I'm running to. I'm running to where the strength is. And
Where
the
God
strength
is,
in the house of God. It's among God's people.
And then what were some of the other
The second thing that happened to me is that I went back to John 11, where Jesus raised Lazarus, and that incredible statement there where he said, I am the resurrection and the life. And I'm like you, I'm a teacher. I'm always looking up words and studying words, and I looked up that word resurrection, and Jesus said, I am the stand up and the recovery. I am the stand up. And I realized for the first time in my life that when you get knocked down, and I hear people say, Pastor, and they mean it. They say, Pastor, I just can't get up. And I know that feeling.
And you can't by yourself.
You can't. And then I realized for the first time in my life, I don't have to get up. He's in me. And if I will let him, he will get up. And when he gets up, I'll get up with him. He'll pull me up with him. And so I was in my bedroom one night crying and feeling bad and hurting, and I started meditating on that verse, and I got up out of my bed, and I purposefully imagined inside of me. It wasn't like a vision. I did it myself. And I saw Jesus stand up. And when he stood up, I stood up.
That's good.
And that he is my recovery. And then he said, I am the resurrection and the life. And the word life means I am the life that satisfies, dwelling in that life. And I had to say this, Joyce, and it was a very powerful statement. And I really pray people hear me when I say it, because what I said then was, I said on Sunday morning, December the 30th, Rochelle left me, but he did not.
Right.
And I cannot say, and we cannot say, and I know why people say it, I really do, but I could not say, I can't live without her. She did not give me life.
Right.
He gives me life. And she left, but he did not. And so I had to take that burden off of her.
Right.
That she was the one that I live for. And I had to put it on him, because he's the one that he's the life that satisfies.
And I think people even have to be careful about developing a mindset as the years go by that, well, my kids are my life, or my spouse is my life, or my ministry is my life, or my business is my life, because none of those are our life. They're part of the life that God gives us, but he is our life. And I thought that was also a very good point that you made, that we have to realize that it's not people who hold us up and keep us going. They encourage us. They edify us. We love them. We enjoy them.
Absolutely.
They encourage us, but Jesus is our life.
He is that life that satisfies. And by reminding myself of that in a greater way than I've ever understood it, then I was able to keep going forward. And then the next thing was, 2 Corinthians 11, it goes back to what happened to me on the Sky Bridge, but Paul makes that list of all the things that happened to him, beaten, robbed, all that amazing list. And I was looking at it one night and I thought, he never said, why me?
Yeah.
And if there was ever anybody that could have said, hey, why me? Why not Peter? Peter's the one that denied you. Remember him?
Yeah.
What about Thomas? Why isn't Thomas getting beaten with rods? Why me? I've never denied you.
Right.
And he never said that. He never said, why me? And I thought, I'm not going to say why me, because it wasn't me. It was Rochelle.
That's good. That's very good. It wasn't me.
And then the last thing is, he took me into 1 Samuel 30 with David at Ziklag, and he was having a good, life was good. David was doing good. In chapter 29, it said he was living upright. And I've always known, as you do, that sometimes really crummy things happen to good people.
Right.
They just crummy things happen to good people.
Yeah, they do. Things you can't explain.
Can't explain. And that day, the Amalekites came in, took their sons, their daughters, their wives, burned their house, took all their possessions. Horrible, horrible day. And it says that the people turned against David. They all wept until they could weep no more. And then the men turned against David, and they were going to stone him. And it says, because the hearts of all the men became bitter.
Right.
And Joyce, I knew from personal life experience the danger of bitterness. And there's two negative human emotions that are spoken of as having a root. One is the love of money, the other one's bitterness.
Yeah.
And roots, as we know, you plant a tree in the backyard and the roots come up in the front yard.
Yeah.
And I've seen bitterness start in an area of life where people can justify it. They can justify it, totally justify their bitterness. But 10 years, 20 years, that bitterness is spread into every area of their life. The dictionary defines bitterness as intense hostility.
Right.
And people become hostile. They become angry, and they begin to take it out. And you end up 15, 20 years, nobody's around you anymore. Nobody wants to be there. They still love you, but they don't want to be around you anymore. And I think David saw that. I saw that. And I've had guys ask me, say, how are you dealing with bitterness? And I said, I don't have anything to be bitter about.
That's good.
This didn't happen to me. It happened to Rochelle. I wasn't the one that went to the treatments. I wasn't the one that had the surgery. I wasn't
You're
the one.
You're not the one that's not here anymore.
Yeah, I'm still here with my grandkids, with my family, with my friends, with my church. I'm still here.
Although I bet she's happier than we are today.
I hope so.
I'm sure in the presence of God that she's happier than we are.
She's dancing like crazy.
Well, sadly, Charles, we're running out of time here, so I want to just make a couple of comments here to bring comfort to the people that are watching. God is a God of justice. And I love that aspect of God's character, that no matter what unjust thing may have happened to you or like you, if you will keep the right attitude and not get bitter, not say why me, not get into why, God will bring justice in your life. I can promise you. It's another way of saying God will make it up to you. You know, I was abused in my childhood, and God has so made it up to me. And I've already heard you say a couple times that some really great things have happened to you. Just God's way of showing, I'm gonna make this up to you. I'm gonna help you. Charles, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it. And thank you for being with us today. We hope the program has